gonna just give it a few more minutes before starting our non-business part of the meeting, until hopefully a few more individuals show up. We do have a quorum.
Well, I did see Gary today, so I know he's not showing up.
I asked Lori and confirmed. She confirmed, he will definitely not be here.
Was he supposed to be?
No.
Okay, I was gonna say.
I think you took his place.
Because I ran, because he wasn't.
But you're the only new one other than the select board, right?
Correct, because Ian was already, and Ian's not coming tonight either, huh?
Ian, no, he's to travel.
Pardon?
He had to travel.
Okay.
How many years, you've been off the board for 2 years?
Is it 2 or
They all
3?
went together.
I don't know, yeah, I was gonna say, how long have you been chair?
Time flies when you're having
Gary,
fun.
since dirt left.
I don't know, it's 2 or 3 years. But,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm still on zoning.
Probably 3. Says it. Gary, hopefully I'm trying to pick up.
My mom's been gone 3 years, so it might be 3, because I don't think she had passed away. I think she passed away before, just around the time I left the board.
So you're on the zoning board also?
I always was on both. Yeah, it made it actually really helpful for some cases that were coming before the zoning board. Have a little more
Yeah,
info.
You get a preview before they come to the zoning board.
Yes, yes, makes it very helpful.
Well, we'll start, and if anybody else decides to show up, then we'll welcome them in when they get here. So I'm gonna go ahead and call the first part of the Nottingham Planning Board meeting to order. This is our non-business, or our business only, I guess, depending on which way you look at it, meeting that we normally have as a separate meeting, but due to the snowstorm and the push of the town elections, I opted to schedule for tonight ahead of our normal 7 o'clock meeting. So first order of business will be to go around the room and have everybody introduce themselves.
Robert Davies, alternate.
Teresa Bascom.
Edward Veal.
Charlene Anderson.
And I want to, I'm gonna go ahead and seat Mr. Davies for Mr. McKinnon tonight, and I'll readdress that again when we get into the 7 o'clock part of the hearing. Before we go too far in, I just want to thank Gary Anderson for the years of service that he's provided the town on this board. He was a great part of this board for many years. He's still serving the town in another capacity of with facilities review through the Board of Selectmen as a subcommittee there. But again, thank you to Gary Anderson for all you do for the town and you did for this board. The first order of business for tonight will be election of officers. We usually do chair, vice chair, and then secretary for in that order.
Well, I guess Ed, would you like to be the chair again?
I was just gonna ask, did you want to do that again?
If, I'm definitely willing to, stay in that role. I'm also always willing to cede it to somebody else if someone else would like to take over that experience, but
I don't see anybody fighting you
I
for
don't
it.
see anything for you.
I move, or nominate Ed Veal for chair.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Myself, all those opposed, the motion carries, unanimous, that's 4-0. Next would
Thank you,
be.
Ed.
Oh, you're
Yes,
welcome.
thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for, the continued support and of me in that role. Vice Chair, I did speak to Mr. McKinnon to see if he was interested in maintaining the seat. He said he is willing to be, Vice Chair again. I'm sure like me, he's willing to cede it as well if anybody else would, wants to step up into that position.
I think he's done a good job. Anybody else want it?
I think he's done a good job. He's provided a lot of input, especially when we, in between meetings, when we've had a vacancy in the land use clerk position. He's been able to step in, and his knowledge of planning board meetings and such beyond our town has been pretty helpful too.
Make a motion that we appoint Ian McKinnon as vice chair.
Second.
That's a motion by Ms. Anderson, a second by Ms. Bascom, that appoint Ian McKinnon as vice chair. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion also carries 4-0.
And is Sue still doing secretarial?
Secretary, I don't know if Sue, have you heard anything from Sue? I did not hear from her. I know she was, the last time it seemed like she was willing to also, step down from that role if anybody else wanted to, or was willing to accept that position. So, either.
I'd be willing to do it. I know that she was hesitant the last time, but stepped up to it, but I'd be willing to do it.
Cool.
If she doesn't want it.
Hard to know. I'm trying to just go by what I think some of her qualms the last
Maybe
time.
we could make a tentative vote.
And I know she doesn't like, chairing the meetings if it gets to that point.
Right, that's why we kind of changed the language in the bylaws
All right, that's right.
to reflect that.
Yep.
Do we want to hold off on that one? Do we need to give her the opportunity to say yay or nay? I mean, I'm not committed to it. I mean, I'm not wed to it.
The will of the board, we can either make a nomination, we could table that position, I think, until the next meeting.
Let's table
Why don't we
it.
do that, right?
Table,
Table.
we'll table the.
I move
vote
that we
on the
table.
secretary. I'll reach out to Ms. Mooney, and see if she's available.
She wouldn't be back till like May
Until after that,
meeting,
so.
right?
Do you want to act as secretary until then?
Sure, if need be, if there's any site visits or something, I mean, that's where she's mainly like filled in is the site visits. And I've substituted in that role a couple of ones where she wasn't able to do. Yeah, I can,
So we can, someone make a motion that that Charlene Anderson, can be acting secretary until, a formal vote is made on that role.
I move that.
I'll second that.
Alright, so we have a motion by Ms. Askin, a second by Mr. Davies, to seat Ms. Anderson as the acting secretary until a formal vote is made, to fill that position for the year. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries 4-0. Alright, well, got that out of the way. Thank you, everybody.
did we want to offer up we have an open position for SRPC for the Stratford Regional Planning?
Oh, yes, I always
Commission?
forget about
Any
the sub-roles,
new
yeah.
members who might want to,
Yeah, so we normally,
You're funny.
we normally, take votes on the subcommittees or the additional roles like CIP and
right.
budget. Sometimes we hold off on those until we get closer to those times. And then we ask someone to step up and appoint somebody. But specifically, I think that is a good role, a good one to bring up tonight, is we have 2 seats. The town has 2 options for SRPC, Regional Planning Commission. The role, what's the role there? That's,
Oh, so now we'd be, because it got voted in the budget, right? So now we're an official, full-on voting member
Yep.
of, so.
commissioners,
Commissioners.
yes.
Yeah, as a commissioner, so.
So don't you want to stay with that, Charlie?
Well, I've got till 2024,
There you go.
Yeah, so yes,
but we have an open position too.
Oh.
Gary had to, step away.
So
from
there was
it.
2 for that now?
Yeah.
Okay, because you only had 1 before.
yeah, we found out we have 2,
Oh, okay.
but they've always been non-voting positions because we weren't dues-paying members of SRPC, so I mean, we could partake, but we couldn't, vote. So now we should, and I'll follow up with the select board to make sure that, I've asked SRPC to confirm if they've invoiced the town for a membership or anything like that. And I'll ask when, their representative arrives later tonight to make sure that goes through, because our budget is finalized now, the town budget is finalized, and that item is in there specifically for that, for us to be, dues-paying members this year. So that means the Commissioner of Roles would have more weight to them.
Okay.
And that was one of Mr. Anderson's reservations about the role, was being there and kind of feeling, you know, not having a voice was tough.
Right. More like a third wheel.
So if there's anybody else that would like to fill that second role.
And it doesn't have to be a planning board member, it can be a member of the community, so, you know, I think it's, if there's no one on the board that wants it, and certainly I think we could bring it up at the next meeting again too, but we could, you know, post it. There is an open position that we're looking for another representative. It helps if you have land use planning, some background on it, but it's not.
What's the commitment, Charlene?
It is, once a month on a Friday. It's kind of challenging, like having and that was a challenge for Gary and I, but it's once a month on a Friday, and then every quarter, there's an additional meeting. And it's really kind of helping to set up the strategic plan for what the planning commission is gonna do. One of the things that I'll talk about later is you work to put together like DOT 10-year plan in this region.
Okay.
Like we just voted on it, that what projects will go forward. And then, I mean, SRPC does housing, so there's a lot of like looking at what are the housing needs in each community and talking about those. I've learned a lot from within our Stratford region. There's the Rochesters and the Durham who have their own challenges, and then there's us and like Milton and, you know, smaller towns who have, you know, different challenges. Like a lot of the smaller towns don't have a planner, and the bigger towns do have a planner, and having a second member kind of representing those smaller towns would be great. So having another member representing Nottingham would be great. You get a lot of information ahead of the meeting, so you get prepared to the meetings. Meetings are really well organized. They have been remote and in-person options, so that's been helpful to me. Then I don't have to spend that extra time driving, and I can slot out from my, you know, work day. Can't guarantee that will remain that way, but most of they're in person, and they're held in Rochester with offices. It's interesting, and I mean, I would say it's like I'd say the first like year I've kind of been in like listen and learn mode, but yeah, and there's a lot of good work going on. That's where, you know, we're benefiting from, so it's interesting.
So what are the time frames of the meetings?
I don't remember. I wanna say the Friday meetings are usually in the morning, and the once a month meetings are in, the late afternoons on Thursdays.
Okay.
I think it's the third Thursday of the month.
And historically, so with these, as Ms. Anderson pointed out, it doesn't have to come from this board. Oftentimes, they do come from the planning boards in the towns because of what's being involved.
Correct, right.
But, towns can designate anybody for the representative.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Are you saying, okay, like you're interested in it, or?
I might be interested in it, sure. If no one else comes forward, I don't want to leave our town hanging on it, so.
Sure. Yeah, and no one has, I know you're wearing a few hats already in town, and I don't wanna overburden you with, another role unless
Should we advertise the position being open?
we can, yeah, definitely.
Unless Teresa really wants it.
Right.
I think we ought to advertise it and see if there's any, first of all, I don't think everybody knows that there's an option for a second representative.
Right, I didn't.
Me neither.
Yep.
Do you want it, Buzz?
No.
We get,
It would be great if there was like someone that was on the planning board in the past and doesn't wanna make as much of a commitment, but wants to be involved, or even the zoning board, or even conservation commission, like any of those, like land use, kind of, you know, or if there's someone who's like in that field, their job, and wants to.
so we can do that, we can do a posting, try to make some more awareness, and then, really fine.
Hi.
For CIP and budget committee reps, I would say that we just table that for now, or leave that until we get closer to those seasons, and we can bring it back up and engage interest at that time. Am I missing any other subcommittees that you should appoint, you should bring a printout? No, okay. So that gets us through that, review of bylaws. This is just something we always put on the agenda for every year, just to make sure that we
Look at them.
we make sure the board remembers that we do have bylaws and rules and procedures. We amended them quite a bit last year,
Yeah,
just with some language, clarifying language, or changing of terminology. Based on all those edits, I don't foresee that, I didn't see anything that I felt stood out for us that changes this.
yeah, I looked it over, I didn't think so either, I mean, we did a pretty good, you know, update and correcting and, you know, editing, last time. The only question I did have, but I'm not quite sure where it would fit under the maybe duties, and it's probably not necessary, but if we wanted to add this, duty of finding of facts that's required after, if we wanted to add that, I mean, we're doing it, and this long, and I'm thinking about it more like, if we all won the lottery and decided to resign, the new members that had to come in and, you know, appoint us, fill in our, you know, jobs, then at least they would know that you still need to do a finding of facts, but, I mean, I don't think it's critical.
I think it's that, or we can amend, we have, or at least I do, application hearings, like a checklist.
Oh, that would be where
I
to
think we
put
should
it.
add it onto this.
I agree,
I think we should add it onto here.
yes. That would be, that's, I think, I agree.
Teresa, are you familiar with what Ms. Anderson's talking about?
That?
No, with
What?
the findings of
No,
fact. So,
I'm not.
so with, so a couple of the new state laws that went into effect this year that really impact this board as well as, ZBA is beyond the, votes to approve, disapprove. We're supposed to record a finding of fact.
Oh, okay.
Highly important on any kind of denial.
right?
Still important for even approvals. It's not formal, it's not like a notice of decision. So what we started doing at the last meeting, or the last couple meetings, was after a vote was made, I read out what I interpret the findings of fact of the board, gave everybody a chance to speak up, and then we'll record that in our minutes.
So what you're
So that-
basing your decision on is your finding of fact?
Right.
Okay,
Yeah,
Yep. The way it reads is basically if you don't have that, or, you know, then it gets appealed, the court can kick it right back, if you don't have those.
okay.
Or just approve it, you know, turn it over, so. That was one of them. There was another thing that was really important. But
Finding the facts just kind of
I'll double check. There was a couple of,
overshadowed everything.
couple of things, but that was one of the biggest takeaways of it.
And-
Timelines was the other one, I think.
yeah, timeframes.
And where, you said the state instituted that?
That was, let's change.
It's an
So it's an RSA now? Do we have the RSA number? Do you know it at all? Either of you? Because I've got the new book, but,
No, but I can send out, we can send out the,
pardon?
I can send out, I've got the slides are from, Charlie and I both attended a webinar,
Okay.
which I wouldn't recommend watching. I'd recommend reading the slides. And it kind of broke it down of like some of the important things that changed that affect land use boards, out of all the state laws,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, I don't remember what the RS.
But that was a very big one, that and then the timelines.
Timelines.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, one of the other big thing too, since we have some time, was the recommendation to not accept applications as complete unless they're fully complete. Or
Okay.
they have every piece of supporting information there, like waivers, whatever, that would allow you to process it. In the past, the way the law read was the boards kind of had a lot of flexibility there, and we've exercised that at this board where, depending on what it was that was missing, we've accepted the application and then addressed those things during the,
What if they're waiting for something from the state? Would that be an exception?
I wouldn't
for like
think
a
so.
permit, you mean?
Yeah,
No, I think that would be okay, as long as
Yeah.
it's more like if we have our checklist and they skip a lot of it, you know, and they don't give waivers for it, waiver requests for it, then it's saying we should deny the application, or it was how I read it.
so even if they've done their homework and they're waiting for the state to get back to them, then we should still deny?
No, I think if, in that case, that'd probably be like a permit type of situation where
Right.
I think that part would be okay. It's more of our own applications.
Right. So if it's something
like
that's
for-
within their control, they've gotta have their homework done before we accept it.
That's how I understand it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So, a couple of big things.
And what about timelines? You've mentioned that a couple times now.
Yeah, I tightened up.
I think that's also why don't accept the application until it's fully complete, because the
Oh.
timelines for us to turn around, an approval, you know,
Start.
Like, they got rid of the appeal to the select board for like, additional time.
Okay.
I think that was one of the things that's gone away. But I think there's still, as long as it's mutually agreeable, it seems like we're still okay.
right.
But if,
Like, I don't think it's something that we've, like, this board, at least as long as I've been on this board, that, like, we've, like, not, like, we're usually, you know, moving them along and, you know, continuing them, and they bring it back, and then, you know, voting on it, so, which I think there were other towns where we heard, like, some towns, they'll accept it, but they won't even hear the case that night, they just accept the application and then do something else, and so it sounds like there's other communities that might slow the process down,
Okay.
but I don't think it's anything that this board, you know, over the years has, like, I think we've
Pushed people to get their acts
moved
together
everything
with it
along
all.
in a timely
Right,
manner. I
right.
mean,
At least in the past, I've seen that.
so if there's no change in the bylaws, then, you know, I don't think we need a motion to accept them, because we've already accepted them previously. So it's, you know, we continue to operate under those, unless we amend them. And we've amended them in the past, you know, at different meetings, and that's always fine too. Any further discussion on bylaws for tonight?
Well, I do have one question. Don't we every year, like, because there's new members, kind of have folks sign off on them, that they've read them and, yeah, by signing below, the planning board members swear to have read bylaws, and rules of procedure for the transaction of business, blah, blah, blah.
That last page,
That last page, I think we do, don't we? In the past.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the adopted dates on the past. For a while, it was every year, and then it skipped a few years, so we can definitely do that.
we do that next meeting when we have more people here, and it will give me a chance to read them?
Sure.
Because I did not read them for tonight. I looked at the case materials.
Totally fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I won't sign it, not having read it.
So we'll adopt those at the next meeting. We have a number of things that we'll go over this year, so the application hearings, I can bring this back up during the other business kind of part of the agenda later on, but I find we'll just add in this checklist, the findings of fact part, make sure that it gets read in. And again, like any motion, an approval, they're saying you kinda should have, you know, within the motion, we should kinda state why we're approving it, you know, it meets our current zoning and subdivision regulations, or you know, with variances if they've been received. And then we read that back into the findings of fact. And again, but denials specifically, we have to be very clear, you know, there has to be a motion to deny something, and anytime there's that, we have to make sure we specify out why it's being denied, because those will be the grounds for appeal, and my understanding of it. So, anybody have anything else for our non-business? We have 5 minutes or so. Anybody need to stretch their legs before the next meeting starts?
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll adjourn the no business part of our meeting. We'll reconvene in about 5 minutes at 7 o'clock.
Hey, Blair.
Hey, how you doing?
I don't know who you.
Hi.
Hi, I'm
I'm
Teresa.
Blair, yeah, I'm Blair. I work with SRPC.
Blair. Okay,
Yeah.
He's our
Nice.
circuit rider.
What's that?
Circuit rider.
Circuit rider, yeah.
gotcha, okay.
So, the town of Nottingham contracts with, the Stratford Regional Planning Commission, to have someone, I guess, on call to review plans, provide, you know, technical guidance.
Okay,
For projects, I'll submit a, staff report, kind of outline some facts.
did I see something from, no, yes, no?
This one's a continued item. They were just responding to some comments, so I don't usually follow up if they're just responding unless there is substantial changes. So
Okay.
you wouldn't have seen something for tonight, but you may have been forwarded the original one.
Right, I do have the original
Okay.
plan review.
Then that would be it, yeah.
Okay,
So,
Ed, didn't you have a question for Blair about something about whether the billing has gone through? For us being full members now?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I'll ask that at the, I'll ask that, we'll get into that.
Oh, that's right, there's 4, let me just date it. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Thanks.
Gosh, if they write these manuals with any smaller print, I'm going to need a magnifying.
I know.
Horrible. This is a lot smaller print. Either that or I'm just gotten a lot older.
So I've started downloading a lot. I usually bring my computer now, because you can control find too, which is, even with our zoning ordinance, it's so much faster.
I bet. Yeah, because I'm trying to find that finding of facts in here,
I'll just find
because I'll need that for our next meeting.
I'll
zoning.
I'll email you right after
Okay,
this.
thank you.
You can-
That's terrible.
All right, I'll go ahead and call the Nottingham Planning Board meeting for Wednesday, April 12th, 2023 to order. This is our regularly scheduled planning board meeting. Prior to this, from 6:30 to 7, we had our no business meeting for election of officer review of bylaws and a few other housekeeping things. Before we begin, I'll go around the room and have everybody introduce ourselves, starting on, am I right?
Robert Davies, alternate.
Teresa Bascom?
Edward Veal.
Charlene Anderson?
Blair Haney, SRPC.
And Mr. Davies will be seated and voting for Mr. McKinnon tonight. Do have a quorum, just barely. So, first item on the agenda, we'll take everything in order, is case number 23-002-SUB, Concrete Products, 100 Smoke Street. It's a continuation. It's an application for Concrete Products in Londonderry, requesting planning board approval of a 3-lot residential subdivision utilizing the existing frontage on Smoke Street. Property is located at 100 Smoke Street in Nottingham, identified as tax map 11, lot number 3.
Ed, excuse me, I just received a text from Sherry. She just got home and apologizes. She was at a meeting and she won't make it tonight.
I appreciate that, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sir, floor is yours.
Good
You can,
evening. For the record, I'm Henry Boyd with Millennium Engineering, and I think you'll probably all know Mr. Mark West. Smaller group tonight, I see, from last time. So last time we were here, there was a request or a desire by this board to reconfigure the lots as we had them. If you remember, we originally had 4 lots, which were reduced to 3. And the last time that we were here, there was a suggestion, could we possibly make lots 1 and 2 smaller and actually wrap lot 3 around to encompass the majority of the property? I spoke to our client, he was amenable to that. And the only other thing that had happened is that we were asked to speak to the river advisory people and some Concom issues. Mark is here to address those things, but one of the things that Mark had asked me to do was to actually add the 50-foot NHDES natural woodland buffer, the 150 buffer, and then also the 250 shoreline setback. So we've added that to all of the sheets. Sheet 1 is what would be recorded at the registry when Mylar is produced. Sheet 2 is the existing conditions. Excuse me, this is essentially a perimeter of the entire property. Sheet 3 is the existing conditions, and sheet 4 is actually where the 30,000 square foot envelopes are located, the 4K test areas, and you can see that on here, we don't even come close to where we would be designing. I guess I would let Mark come up and talk about that.
This is a response letter to the letter from LRAC. And, so back when this, geez, a long time ago, back when this project started, LRAC was consulted, I think it was from the Conservation Commission, and at that time they said, these are not the this is not when we usually get involved in projects. We get involved when there's a wetland permit or a shoreland permit. And then you all went back and asked them for suggestions, comments, and what I did was, at one point I believe I called you and asked if, I wasn't sure exactly what of their recommendations you all wanted to see done or not done, and I could have gotten this done a little earlier, but I just said, well, I'll do the best I can to answer the questions and maybe give my take on some of the issues. So what I have here is a letter with their comment, and then in italics, my response. The first one has to do with the aquifer protection regulations. They regulate things like manure management or hazardous waste or anything like that. And typically, a individual house lot of this size would not have an issue complying with that regulation. There's nothing else designed in this subdivision that would trigger impacts or something that would be counter to their, to that regulation. And obviously, any work would have to comply. The next one is a little more, is very different. You talked about
Could I just back up? So I think the way that I interpreted what, Lamprey River was saying was, in reference to like if a ATV were to go in the back, or if someone were to set up a trail and put their Jeep back. So not the building side of it, but the potential use of the land and crossing the wetlands. Because they reference.
Are you on number 2?
No, I'm on, yes, I guess.
Okay, good, all right.
All right.
I just wanted to make sure.
It's to me, so that's how I'm
I
like.
understand. Yeah, and so, the first thing they asked for though was to do potentially a functional assessment.
Right.
With no wetland impacts, I've never had to do a functional assessment if there's no proposed wetland impacts. I understand some people could do things, but these orange areas, there's an 80-foot wide area for this lot to go back. This is a watershed divide. This water goes this way, this water goes this way. This is not fill, this is the natural landscape. So this lot, they can go back. I was out there today, this is poorly drained soil, there's no water at the surface, you can easily walk across it. This little stream, in places is less than 2 feet wide, you can step over it. So for physical access there, they have the ability to do that. Obviously, if somebody's gonna do ATV trails and all kinds of other things, that's a whole nother thing. It's up to you all if you wanna do restrictions on what's allowed and what's not allowed on a piece of property. But we can't I don't think I need to do a functional assessment to determine whether ATVs could or could not impact wetlands. They could if they go in the wetter part of the wetland and rut it up. So my response was that you can get back there, and that I don't feel a functional assessment of the wetlands on the property is needed to understand that you can access it. There's no vernal pools here or here. There's a potential vernal pool. I was out there today, it's still frozen. So in some places the wood frogs are calling, but back in there, but that vernal pool isn't actually on the property. And it's 700 feet from the closest 30K area on this lot.
Well, and there's a vernal pool down in this lower area here too, right?
No, that
I mean, it's in
VPD is very poorly drained.
Okay, got it.
So the only possible vernal pool is off-site here. So, and I walked this whole property, and there's no other pools or potential pools. So this is a potential pool, I didn't confirm it, but it's a potential pool. And that, item 3 had to do with the FEMA floodplain, which is this dark line here, and they recommended you restrict construction there. Again, that's up to you all, but this is 12 to 16 feet higher than the floodplain of the river, the active floodplain of the river. It's significantly above the the floodplain in that location. I put this on the map to show that you could actually develop this lot without even getting a shoreline permit. The only reason you'd need a shoreline permit is if you're doing construction across this line. I also showed the woodland buffer, and that's where restrictions on cutting of trees, you have to preserve 25% of the woodland buffer on the lot. They're not gonna be anywhere near that in doing work there. So, they're out of the floodplain. They talked about, this being premature, and that they may need more information. They would get more information if a shoreline permit is applied for. That's when we do the Natural Heritage Bureau data search. That's when we do impervious areas and things like that. All of that would be done if there's work in the shoreline zone of the, do 250 feet. So I already talked about on the next page, the vernal pools.
Can you back up just a minute? So,
Sure.
I mean, in looking at the 30K lot envelope, some of that envelope is in that, isn't it in that
No.
250?
It goes right next to it. That's,
Yeah, that's why I was having a hard time trying to.
that's why I put the color in blue.
I was having a hard
I
time.
think they
differentiating where
use
the-
that as an edge of the 30K.
The lot
Is that-
was, the 30K is.
We don't,
Yeah, the edge of the shoreline area is the edge of
The 30K?
30K. That's, I had the same problem, that was the conclusion I
So
made.
that's not really
You don't-
clear.
No,
Yeah.
it's, oh, yeah, it's, because you would have 3 hatches
Right,
overlapping, so
yeah.
the shoreline took
So
the
it should be
precedent.
probably marked.
Can you confirm that? So,
Yeah.
Is
Do
that-
you have a marker, a highlighter or something, or?
I have a whole fistful of,
Here, I'll highlight it right up. I'll put,
take whatever color you'd like. And then could you show us where it is?
yeah, that's what I'm highlighting right here. This is the line right here for the 30K here.
You think, right? Because it's not clear.
Isn't it this dashed line that goes back to here and like that?
That's a 75 from us, it's properly in there. For some reason, it didn't print well, but
Mm-mm.
it's right here. It's in there.
Okay,
Because we can't be inside of the 75 foot, and it's just outside, as Mark said, of the 250. For some reason, when this copied, you could see dashes of the line, but
Yeah.
for some reason, it didn't take. I'll make sure that when we print the final copies,
You have dashes going every which way, so I wasn't sure which one, because none of them match up like the others.
I know there's a lot of lines involved.
See?
So the 30 is right here, right on that line, where this pink is, it's right there.
it shows up a little clearer on these two lots.
He's got your cap,
Okay. I want that back too, please.
you got a cap back.
Oh, so you're actually going a lot larger for your buildable area here. That's,
Yeah, so it's the same size as this, but see these dashes right here, for some reason, and when the computer spit it out, it struggled.
well, that's where I had stopped. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
that's where it is.
and over here, I'm like, which way does it go? Does it go that way or does it go this way?
It follows the 75 foot flood, because we can't build within the 75 foot offset.
So it's a strange sized lot.
So their final comments were about the vernal pool, the data check, and I did mention that I was asked by Sue Mooney early on to do a check for nesting turtle sites within the gravel pit, and I searched the whole site, photo documented it, and did not find any turtle nests, turtle eggs, digging, that type of stuff. The other item was, will the Nottingham Concom review the plans? If they were doing a wetlands permit, they would. The shoreline permit, if they do it, will get sent to the town clerk, but it doesn't specifically get sent to the Conservation Commission, and again, we don't know if
And the plans were provided to the Conservation Commission at the request of this board the last time we were here, so.
their next comment was, will the driveways be paved? That's not known at this time. It's gonna depend on the owner and the builder and things like that. And then the last one was what kind of erosion control, and nowadays people are using silt sock mostly. So those are my responses. I realize you're just getting them now, but I really wasn't sure what to do with the LRAC letter because it's not typical to have for a subdivision, so. And some of the things are, things like ATV use is not, something we usually need to address.
But we had, LRAC was because of the
Right,
river.
right.
Yeah, it's my understanding, anytime the planning board is entertaining a subdivision that impacts or involves the shoreland, area, or that the local river advisory commission has to be given a chance to comment.
Any questions for me?
Can you give us a minute to just read this?
Sure.
That'd be good, thanks. While you're doing that, Mr. Haney, did you have any updates that you wanted to speak to from, obviously you didn't get this letter before, so you can't speak towards that, but based on revised plans from previous,
No, I went through it, I had emailed someone in, the MEI office about having, the wetland scientist, stamp its signature on the plans, cause we do have the surveyor. I guess they had added some details to it and had not been able to get updated plans signed.
Yeah, so that was me that responded.
Yeah.
And I knew Mark was coming tonight.
Yeah.
What happened is I added those notes for him and I had to get the deliverables back here before I had a chance to have him stamp the plans, but obviously the final, he stamped these, but he can stamp all other copies that we produce for the final.
Yeah. So that was the only thing that I had, found when I went through the updated plans that Elena sent out, the four sheets. So, they did look good to me. I don't know if you had a chance to see it or not. Oh, he sent it Monday night, I guess you probably did. I just saw it today. Ian had emailed us.
yeah. I'll go into
If you
those
wanna go over
comments.
that, you can go over that.
And then there was intended that for a conservation commission review of the plans before tonight. I guess there was a miscommunication, misunderstanding. I guess the Concom's normal procedure, and Mr. Demerit's here, so welcome to the table in a few minutes, if he wants to speak. Normally, I guess they have an applicant present before they address anything or speak towards a plan set. I believe at this meeting, we specifically said, it's our understanding that you did not have to be present.
That's correct.
So it seems like there was a miscommunication there. I know there was a chance for plans to be reviewed during a prior plan set when this case was before us. This law was before us previously. So again, I'll invite Mr. Demerit to speak in a few minutes, if he so chooses. Some of the planning board items first. Anybody have any questions, comments before I jump in?
No, go ahead, Ed.
Well, actually, I think I just got a quick question because I don't know. What is NHB?
Natural Heritage Bureau.
Okay, thank
They're
you.
the ones who have the data on rare plants and animals.
Thank you.
And at the prior meeting, we accepted the application as complete, and we also had a motion that it was not a development of regional impacts. We checked those two things off. A couple of my comments still stand. I'd mentioned the last time that lot 3, the well radius, the way our subdivision regs are, the entire well radius has to fit within the new boundaries, so that would just have to be shifted a bit. Looks like you have plenty of room to do so.
Yep.
Okay, I noticed it crossed over.
That, and I do appreciate the revised plans, I think these make more sense with the, one of the lots being overly large, and the other two still being oversized lots, but again, I think that gives any potential buyer of lot three more options with either, current use or conservation if they so choose where that's a protected river corridor. So I think that gives both the applicant and the potential buyer of that lot some options there. I appreciate speaking towards, that's a concern of, how is someone gonna access their property if it's, cut off by protected areas. And then answer that for lots 1 and 2. For lot 3, I'm assuming there'd be some kind of, so one of the things we discussed at the prior meeting was before this came before us, the board had voted on some additional zoning regulations. Those were passed by a town meeting, which means this is, subject to those. That's the 25-foot, no disturb vegetative buffer around wetlands. Trying to remember what other ones.
Well, the roadway,
The roadway, which this doesn't impact, there's no
And then-
road proposed here.
the changes to the
Change to
aquifer.
the Aquifer Protection District, which I believe at least someone spoke towards, I believe Mr. West, I believe you might have corresponded with Mr. Haney on that part, that the updates to the Aquifer Protection District did not have any adverse, effect to this, is my understanding of that communication. Mr. McKinnon's comments were just a couple, let's see what those.
The minutes?
No, Mr. McKinnon sent a couple of things since he wouldn't be here. Couple standard ones that he catches, usually it's additional pins on some of the boundaries, so anywhere where a bound is, or a lot line is gonna be over 300 feet, we require a pin somewhere along the midsection of that. So for the back of lot 2, that'd be the north.
Well, he does catch stuff, doesn't he?
Sure does. Around the northwest, boundary, the top boundary there. So that's over 300 feet, so that would require just a middle pin somewhere. And then the same thing on lot 3, obviously that, any of those longer lot lines that are over 300 feet long would require intermediate
And
pins.
it's got double ones here,
Yeah,
so I think that would do it here, and then one here.
yeah, and then just show those on, sheet 4 as well. Any of the proposed monuments would be good to see on sheet 4. And I think you've got most of them. Let's see. The contiguous areas, lot 1, I think you've got that, where you're showing the lot's 5 acres now, the contiguous upland being 3.54, that calculation, I'm assuming, is everything below the wetlands.
That's correct.
Okay.
I,
And then-
you know, there's about this much between that lot line, but, it really isn't accessible, so I can calculate this other area on here, but it's not buildable anyway, so I didn't show it.
Okay, so that line on sheet 1 is just to show that there's setbacks back there from,
Correct.
the 50-foot setback.
Yep.
The other setbacks, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, based on what you said, it probably would be a good idea to add that 25-foot buffer on the plan for recording as well.
Yep. Yeah, and oftentimes some applicants, have erected placards at that line to help landowners understand where that is.
Is that a requirement?
I can leave it up to the board on that one. And then when you get to, the deeds or what's gonna be filed, any of the additional restrictions specifically imposed upon these areas, and like with the Aquifer Protection District specifically, incorporating that language somehow into the deeds would be probably advisable. That way, any landowner purchasing these lots will understand, not everybody pulls a plan set when they buy properties, but they do get to see their deeds. So I'd probably recommend that. But than that, I think, again, I think this is much better has evolved to a much better place, from what we saw initially, especially because of the restrictions on the lot with the flood zone and the wetlands and the river and everything else that goes along. So thank you for making those changes. Questions from the board, otherwise we can open the public hearing.
No, you covered everything that I had.
All right, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. This is the time of night for anybody that would like to speak for, against, or has questions about the application to come forward, please. Usually we take everybody in favor first, but there's only a few people here, so if you'd like to speak. For Mr. Demerit, if you want to speak, either as an individual or towards a.
We had a question at our meeting the other night as to whether or not the Heritage Bureau had been contacted.
I didn't contact them because they aren't triggered for this type of thing. So we have to be applying for an alteration in terrain, a Wetlands Bureau application, or a shoreland application. We could do a landowner check, which any landowner can do, but they're going to basically refer to the list of species that are known to occur in Nottingham. So I've never had to do a Natural Heritage Bureau for anything but state requirements. It's a state requirement, it's an official thing. So I don't think you can get what your typical NHB, Natural Heritage Bureau, data search for a project unless you're doing one of those 3 applications.
And just to, I know Mark already said so, but all of the intended work is to be outside of even the 250 foot. So it wouldn't even be a shoreline permit, and it's nowhere near the wetland. If, for some reason, some crazy person buys this and they want to get into that, then they would have to have a shoreline permit, and Mark would be asked to do it at that point. That definitely would trigger the NHB report.
And then we do the NHB. When Sue asked me to look into the turtle nesting, that's the first, or the one species that's most potentially likely to be in that river is the wood turtle, which is a species of concern, which is right in the North River, right out here. We found it on the North River Preserve across the street, and so that's why we did the turtle search. But the only other thing is a landowner search, which is just you have to be the landowner to do it. So.
Okay, and you did contact the LRAC?
I called Susan Peterson, who's their administrator, just to try to understand her take on the letter, and she repeated that these are comments, you all asked for comments, and they said, okay, here are our comments. But she stressed that they're not enforcing anything, it's because it's not a permit. Like they don't have the same authority or power as when they do it through a permit.
Okay.
But we responded anyway, so we do the same thing as if we were doing that.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing at 7:29. All right, bring it back to the board. So I don't know if this could be a good item to put on as a note, and I think it would address some of those concerns with the Heritage Bureau and shoreline permits, things like that. Is maybe add a note stating no work is being proposed within the shoreline setback area, and it's understood that should a landowner decide to do such work,
Right.
you know, National Heritage Bureau and whatever permits that apply at that time would be required.
I always prefer to put those on the sheets that can be recorded,
Yes.
so,
So I think that's an easy note to just
yeah, absolutely.
make sure people aren't surprised by it if the landlord buys it and they decide they wanna start putting a barn over there or something. They're just kinda made aware of it.
You wouldn't, you have to do the Natural Heritage Bureau to do a shoreline permit, but the Natural Heritage Bureau is not a permit.
Right.
And so, as long as it's clear they have to get a shoreline permit, then that's required, and a lot of other things.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think calling it out as a note on the plan that's recorded is good, because it also helps the building inspector that's gonna potentially issue a permit is aware that that area, you know, that's gonna be subject to that, based on the way the rules are written.
Now, question. If someone decides they want lot 3, which is the bigger issue lot, are they advised of all of this information before they would purchase a lot, or are they advised after they purchase a lot?
Would think that would fall to the buyer, their due diligence, front. So if there's some information in the deeds, that might call out some items, but as for, like, knowing to where to build and such, the plan is recorded in the registry and is accessible, and they can always access it here as well. That shows them where the expected building envelope is in some of those areas that are non-buildable. Does that answer your question?
Yes and no, I'm just thinking if I was a landowner going and looking at this lot going, ooh, I really like this, and I picture my house here, and I could put the garage there, and then I find out, no, you can't, after I've already purchased it, that would really upset me.
If they pull the deed, which, I mean, if you're buying a piece of property, right, you should probably pull the deed and look into the history of it.
I
If
don't,
it's, the language is in the deed, so, and then the realtor should show them the plan if it's a good realtor,
okay,
you know, and, I mean, this could be bought by a developer who would then have the plan.
And the deed will usually reference the plan set.
Right,
that the-
that's why I suggested that when the deed references, so for example, lot 3, if you're gonna buy lot 3, it will specifically call out that plan, and that's why I suggest that we add that restrictive note to the plan, because when they call it up at the registry and see it, it'll be there, and it will give them some sense of a, look, if you're gonna do something other than this, then you'll need to get a permit.
so is this, because I am new to the board tonight, this is just for subdivision, this isn't subdivision with planned development already?
That's correct. Just to sub, three lots.
3 lots,
Okay,
so it could be sold 1 lot each, you know, or a builder could buy all 3 lots.
And then at that point, they have to go to the building inspector, and I'm sure he's gonna require a septic design plan has to be done by the state, it has to be approved, which has to meet all of the standards, not only for the state, but the town.
right,
And
right,
then a building permit issued with the septic, and then a building plan as well.
okay, so this isn't a planned development type thing at this
The
point?
developer's not bringing it
Okay.
forward, it's just subdividing the lots.
Okay. Gotcha.
Further question or comment?
No, I'm just wondering, do we wanna do a conditional on this with all the notes, or see the final plan?
I think there's nothing substantive really being changed, there's some pins being added, a well radius being moved. Lots aren't being reconfigured, there's no major changes to the plans, I think.
Notes on the plan.
My notes for, if this were to be a conditional approval, it would be our normal, conditions, you know, plan copies with stamps, original Mylar, all fees paid, additional items that we determine. And then any state permits, which in this case, I don't believe there are any state permits being sought. There's no
No.
shoreland, there's no alteration of terrain, no wetlands.
Nope.
A subdivision, permit, no, it's over.
No, because all the lots are over 5 acres.
So so there's none of that, so it's just, bounds being set, which we have a form for, in those edits. that it's being, again, add a note about, to alert the, that anything, any work, no work's being proposed in the shoreland area, and any work, would require, you know, proper permitting at that time.
And we're gonna clarify the lot envelope and the building envelope
Yeah,
in
make sure,
lot
that-
three.
make sure that's just really
Yeah,
well shown.
it was on there, sir, it's just for some reason, when that print got made, that line, computers do wacky things sometimes. I'll ensure that when we deliver you, and that's a question I had for you, how many plan sets do you require copies when I bring it back with the Mylar? How many do you want?
Got it.
Just two?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we reduced it, substantially.
Yeah, absolutely. Because didn't it used to be 5?
Yeah, we still have to update the subdivision regs to reflect it, but we updated our applications.
Okay.
The numbers of, especially these large ones, we went to more of the 11 by 17, so people were working off those.
Good.
Do you want me to make conditional approval?
Motion would be great, sure.
Okay. Bear with me as I go through the conditions, but, I'll make a motion that we, conditionally approve, case 23002, subconcrete, products, 100 Smoke Street, with the following conditions, standard conditions of approval, note on the plan to be, recorded at the registry of deeds that no work would be done on the shoreland, zone, clarify the building envelope on lot 3, place the pins on lot 2 and 3 as required, include the 25-foot no buffer around the wetlands, add a note, on the plan recorded at the deed, to be recorded at the deed regarding the, allowances and uses and conditions of the aquifer district. I think that was it, right?
Low radius.
Oh, and yes, and on lot 3, shift the well, radius.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Ms. Anderson, a second by Mr. Davies, to conditionally approve, the case. Any further comment? So our condition, when we conditionally approve, if we don't set a different timeline, it's usually 1 year, to have that, all those met. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, that motion carries 4-0. All right, thank you all.
Thanks a lot.
So the findings of fact, as I understand them, is, this application was approved, having met the standard set forth within our subdivision regulations, in zoning, ordinance, compliance with the Aquifer Protection District specifically, and all the other, aspects of the zoning ordinance as we've seen.
And, Mr. Chair, just add, one that we discussed at the last meeting that we might want to put in the finding of facts is that the steep slopes are man-made and do not require to meet the, slope ordinance.
Correct. And within that finding of fact, we found that this was not a development of regional impact, and the steep slopes that were shown towards the front of the lots and the proposed building envelopes, were not naturally occurring. They were left over from gravel operations, so therefore did not need to meet the steep slopes part of our zoning. All right, moving on. Thank you as well.
Aye.
Other business, case 22014 SUB Falzone from Sinai Mylar. We had reviewed that previously, and I had town council's input. Everything was met, so I signed that earlier tonight and allowed the applicant's representative to take the Mylar with them to be recorded. The case 20003 SUB DeBerto Mitchell Road. We're still holding off on signing the Mylar. I re-reviewed, this case has been before us for 3 years, almost exactly, in May. There's been some back and forth between what the applicant submitted to us, and then we submitted to town council, and then went back and changes in their council. So as I understand it, it looks like that we are waiting for a final comment from our council based on a response that they had provided. There was a counter response from the applicant's council, and I do not see that our council has had a chance to respond to that. Our land use clerk, Alana, has been in touch with our town council to make sure that they're aware that we're kind of waiting for that response. So I do expect one soon. So I expect, if everything checks out, that we'll be signing this Mylar by the next meeting, or I might come in prior to that if we get approval. I still prefer the whole board to sign, or more of the board to sign on plans, but it's actually only the chair's signature that is needed for them to be able to go record the applications, the Mylars. So, I still like the practice of more people getting a chance to look at it and confirm it and sign it. Recent NHDES notices of butter notifications. Some of these are just things that are sent to the town. We didn't always know about them. Where they go to the land use office, Alana has been including us in them now. So it's basically people filing for shoreline permits. So oftentimes it's construction, it's probably things, that often might fall to the ZBA, so you probably see many of these cases, Ms. Bascom.
Okay.
I think these are all shoreline permits, forestry permit. Forestry permit, which looks like it has to deal with the Wetlands Bureau, but again, that falls under the forestry rules, which, I'm guessing supersede some of our protections. But a lot of shoreline permits. So if anybody's interested in these, I'll leave this here, and you can take a look at it. Public comment this time of night, where we always reserve time for, anybody from the public to come in and ask us questions. If they don't, just regular planning questions, zoning questions, things that we might be able to answer. If it's case specific, we usually cannot respond. So we always reserve this for anybody. Mr. Mayor, did you want to come up? No. There's nobody here tonight for that, so we'll move on. Approval of minutes, there's a set of minutes, is that correct? January 11th? No, okay. Select board, staff board member updates. I guess before we get into that, I'm gonna jump into kind of our other business portion. So the things, we have a lot of housekeeping to do this year. It's gonna be a very busy year potentially for us. So one quick thing, as we just determined earlier, we have an application hearings checklist, which Alana, I'll ask if you hopefully have this as an electronic, where we'll wanna add in, the findings of fact. Under I guess after number 14, where it says vote, we'll wanna add something there, talking about, record finding of facts for the minutes.
Night.
Hi, Sam.
Good night, Sam.
The SRPC membership we talked about, we'll make sure something goes on. Oh, sorry, SRPC membership. So I wanna thank the town for supporting the town's budget, which included, funds for the town to become a dues-paying member, with SRPC. That aligns us with, I think, every other town in the region, except for maybe one small town, that's not a dues-paying member. With it comes some additional benefits, as well as, our commissioners, if we have commissioners, will be full members and have a chance to vote. We've also been paying, the dues paying member rate for our circuit rider, fees, so we actually get more hours, if you wanna look at that way, than we would otherwise, because the fee should have been higher. So, Ms. Rainey, I asked Jen, emailed you and Jen, just to see if, don't know what the process is to bill the town or submit an invoice to the town for that, so that those funds should be available now for us to permit. And,
I'll let her know. I'm guessing she knows. Yeah. I don't know. I just submit hours, so I don't actually have a loop on that, but I can follow up with her. I just let her know that you were
Yep,
letting her know.
so that'll get that. Other things we have for housekeeping. Impact fees, we have to re-review those, re-adopt them, amend them. I'll read
Oh, no, I
this year.
came for that.
What's that? So we have, I mean, the big one obviously is the
wait for you to-
fire part, so the bond has been paid off. So if there's nothing in the CIP that supports a continued impact fee there, we would wanna potentially zero that out. But we should look at the others as well. I'll be reaching out, or reach out to SRPC to see what support there is for how to evaluate those. In the past, we used a third party that we contracted with.
Right.
That was kind of the, say, leader in setting those up for towns, but Bruce Mayberry, but I don't believe he's available anymore. So we have those to address, and that should be soon that we get to those. Master plan update, it has been about 10 years, so we have to we should at least re-review it, do some cleanup, and re-adopt it. This shouldn't be a major overhaul. We may want to consider trying to budget, if it's available. I think it's been thrown around. Can we do warrant articles like other things where we budget, say, $1,000 a year for 5 years to be able to fund the updates of these through a third party, or pay for more community involvement, either flyers to go out to residents so that they're aware that we're updating it and what's involved. Charrettes, if I'm saying it right, some towns do those to really try to gauge input and gather input, so things like that. So that's another item. We always do a ZBA joint meeting. We usually invite the Concom and building inspector to that as well as, I guess, any other town department that wants to come in. I think we usually do that later in the year, sometime in the summer or towards the end of summer, before we get into like zoning updates. And one thing I'd like us to do is work with Alana. One thing that became very blatantly clear for me was when we had a vacancy in the land use clerk position, how much was falling to other people, and it was kind of a scramble. Other people in town, Kelly Delaire being one specifically, stepped up immensely and helped keep things running for us. But it just showed that we have a lot to document to make sure we understand what the process is for applications coming in, everything going out, the timeline of that, just all the coordination that occurs to make us be able to have our meetings run smoothly, and then the follow-up afterwards. So that's another thing I'd like us to do. We talked about looking at our fees. We don't set fees, the select board does, but we can recommend fees. So Alana was great. That was another RSA change, was we have to make sure our fees are published, and they're online now. So making sure those are kind of still in compliance, or not in compliance, but within,
Makes sense,
makes sense within other, what the other communities are charging and everything.
right? We're not undercharging or overcharging.
Right, so ultimately, the cost falls to applicants and not to everybody else in town for things. So that's something we should look at again, and make recommendations on. A lot of things. One thing procedurally, I'm gonna continue to ask about with either council or our new town administrator. Welcome, by the way, to our new town administrator, Ellen White.
Ellen, yeah.
Right. So I thank her for, stepping up and filling that role. I know she's gonna have a quick learning curve and I'm sure she has a lot on her plate already, but, I have extended a welcome to her if she'd like to come in, sometime to meet with us, just to introduce and for us to let her know what we're seeing and what we're working on. But I'll update her on this as well. But one thing we talked about potentially doing is, the town, we have the contract rate for SRPC, to serve as our planner and review plans and everything else and the number of hours that goes in. We threw it around a little bit, was just like when we have the ability to put things out for third-party review and the cost of which is borne by the applicant. Do we create a threshold where, every major subdivision that has, maybe it's not every major subdivision, but every major subdivision over a certain number of lots, or that involve, you know, wetlands or the aquifer protection district or some other criteria, that those automatically get triggered to a third-party review? Or do we keep track of the hours from SRPC and bill those back to the applicant? I believe some towns have started doing that, so that is one way for this board to potentially reduce our tax burden. Again, I think I think the town's usually very fiscally responsible, and this board comes at is a great bargain in that we don't collect a salary or a stipend or anything like that. It's 7 to 9 individuals usually that are all professionals or bring expertise to this board in one aspect or another. So that part isn't impacted, providing a cost, but we do have other costs that we can control, and I think it's worth a look. So I'll keep reaching out on that to see if it makes sense. And that might offset our dues for like SRPC as well. So those are the things I could think of. Does anybody else have?
I had a question about
course.
the master plan.
Yep.
You said we have more time now with Stratford Regional?
No, I'm sorry. We have, I apologize, the way I was wording that. So our contract for Circuit Rider runs from, I think it's May, June, July, somewhere like that. It's not on the calendar year that everything else follows. It was signed mid-year, so it's 12-month. So it's a fixed dollar amount, but the price per hour that we are charged was currently at the dues paying member rate versus what it was supposed to be, which was about 10% higher. So in that, I mean, in a way, we've been getting extra hours.
Okay, so we don't have more hours coming to us, so it wouldn't make any sense to go that direction. Okay,
Depending on caseload too, I mean, I'm open to working with SRPC on it and having their input on it. Now, I'd have to see if it's within our contract, if that's a piece of our contract with them specifically. But if our caseload this year is anything like last year, we ate up all the hours with SRPC for just plan review in our meetings and everything. I'm kind of hoping that we get a breather this year, but we'll see. And then the last one, CIP, it's been found, actually falls to this board. So when you look about how towns can adopt a CIP committee, CIP plan, capital improvement plan, it's usually done through the planning board, and the running of it can be ceded to like the select board. That has to be through town meeting. So no one's found where that ever occurred. So it's been operating under the select board kind of running it, but it actually falls to this board to both compose it and be in charge of it. So we have that on our plate for this year as well.
Okay, wow.
Yes. Fun times. And I'll be reading up more on that to make sure, you understand when that comes in. So lots and lots of stuff on our plates. And some of that will probably be easy. Actually, we have another thing. The subdivision site plan regulation updates. Now that zoning has passed, we kind of waited to do some of the updates to sub-regs and site plan regs, to wait for those to go through, so we can kinda encompass it at once. So we should do that. Those are easier, it's just public notice, public meeting, and we can adopt it, it's not.
But we don't know how busy this board is gonna be with new cases coming in, so what we probably ought to do, or what you ought to do,
Yep.
is put things in a priority list. We have to, I mean,
Check
only
them
so,
off as we
so
go.
many hours in the year,
You're correct.
so many things we can get to.
Right.
Yep,
Yeah, we checked a few of them off this year, from the priority list that we had developed. I know there's still some things that are on there, but we definitely did a few things, which was nice.
yep, so the subdivision site plan regs updates, I'll touch base with, Mr. Haney to try to see where we are with those. I'd suggest everybody kind of take a look through and see if they identify any other areas, or we'll get the list of what we've identified that we've talked about before. So simple one, plan sets, how many plans are required, you know, those kind of things. We know that's in there. Some things in the appendices that were wrong, there's like 911 maps versus town maps, things like that, just clean up. We'll put a list together and we'll get that on, agenda for one of the next meetings that looks lighter. And then I'll do, as Mr. Davies suggested, which is outline all of these items and make a hierarchy, or my proposed hierarchy, but then allow the board to comment and switch that around. Okay?
Yeah, and I think like, something like review the fees, I mean, we might be able to, you know, that could be information that SRPC has on what the different communities are doing, so that might be just a look-see, compare, and make a couple of decisions, so that might,
Yeah.
that's not a big lift.
I think Mr. McKinnon actually was compiling that, so
Was he?
I'll touch
Yeah.
base with them before.
You mean the impact fees?
No, the review the fees that we charge.
Oh, okay.
Impact fees are, that's a little bit different.
Right, well, yeah. Because that was one of the things he mentioned, was looking at impact fees, so I didn't know which fees you were referring to.
Yeah.
I could, yeah, and I'd consider the impact fees being towards the top that we have to address.
Yeah, because of
Especially
the
It's also gonna take up quite a bit of time.
paying off of the bond.
Well,
Well,
and,
there's a, probably a bigger discussion, but some of them, at least, fire, for example, I know, you know, that one, we'll look at the CIP and see if there's anything that qualifies, and if not, then it should be zeroed. in my
And I think
opinion.
getting a hold of that facilities, the plan that the building facilities committee did, I mean, that's gonna impact CIP and the impact fees, what's on that list, and if there's been timeline and decisions on that, I know it's just a draft stage now, but.
and for impact fees, though, we need to also look at the development that's going out at Pawtuckaway, because that's gonna impact a lot on our police and fire, with that new development that's proposed out there.
Expansion.
Yeah.
The expansion of the state park.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
For, on us, because our town and Raymond cover all of that.
Unfortunately, we cannot charge an impact fee to the state. So Ms. Baskin brings up a good point. So there was a public meeting, I believe, last night, with the state, about a proposed expansion at Pawtuckaway, for the campground. I previously checked with council on it to see if we have, what's our role in that.
Right.
We could submit comment, that's about it.
Okay.
So
They're gonna do what they're gonna do.
It's the state.
So we can definitely submit comment, and if anybody has comment, I think we can put this on the agenda for the next meeting, just so that we have a chance to submit comment in from the board if there is anything, in general, you know, I think the normal stuff of impact to police, fire, the quality of the lake, any concerns about milfoil.
Correct.
Now, that's a regional impact, that expansion plan right there.
So those things, so it does fall to Nottingham, oftentimes, to have the emergency services get there, and, down our size with, our emergency personnel, you know, limited numbers of,
Right.
that's a severe, you know, that could be pretty critical. especially where it's the other end of the town.
Excuse me, yeah, if,
Not only is it the other end of town, but you gotta go through another town to get there.
and our fire department is at that end of town,
Right.
so it's not like it's down here like it used to be in a straight shot.
Yeah, so hopefully our, you know, I guess the other option is too, is everybody can write to their state reps and everybody to make sure that their voices are heard as well, so that they stay a part of it, and, comment as possible. All right, so I got a list of things, I'll make sure I get those all written out and shared with everybody, so that we're all aware of some of the cleanup that we have for this year, or we should be doing,
That doesn't touch on warrant articles or
which would be towards the end of the year, yeah.
anything that we might need a lot of.
In the warrant articles, we can re-review kind of what we have outstanding from the last master plan update. That's where we kind of picked up most of our action items. We've cleared a bunch of them, over the last 10 years. We've cleared a bunch of them. So could address them either, you know, through a zoning amendment or tabled them, or incorporated them in other ways. All right. Board and staff, board member updates. I'll start with Mr. Davies.
I made all the comments I need to make tonight.
I appreciate you being here. This shows the importance of our alternates for both, you know, the information they bring to the table and everything for meetings, but also to, if we wouldn't have had a quorum tonight had you not been here. So again, appreciate you being in that role and being here tonight.
I have nothing.
Welcome to Ms. Bascom. I can't remember if I said it at the beginning of this meeting, but thank you for stepping up, and welcome back to the board.
Thank you,
Yes.
thank you.
We've been busy. And again, thank you to Mr. Anderson for his role previously. I think I've spoken enough tonight. I don't think I have anything else for anybody. We do have a meeting on April 26th, just to remind everybody, for a major subdivision, is the only thing on the agenda at the moment that I'm aware of.
Yeah, are we gonna get the plans on that, hard copies? Have we stopped getting plans mailed to us?
I haven't been sending them out, but I can if you want me to.
Yeah, that's helpful if we can get them. I thought you'd have them in our binders, but, yeah, it's helpful to have them, cause I can't digest them electronically when I look at them, cause of just my phone.
What I've been doing for zoning, and this is, I've asked her to have it, my binder ready, and I pick it up a week prior, so that I have a chance to review, because like you, I don't like reading everything on the computer. It bothers my eyes, so, and I like to do my review of the
Color it.
plans and color it in, so.
Yeah, we usually get, or if we send them out, it's usually the 11x17s.
Right.
Instead, so it's just a little bit easier. We always have these larger plan sets here, but if they are sent out, we just ask, yeah, I guess if possible, if it doesn't add too much, like, if we get the 11x17s.
Yeah, cause I can't always get here.
I try to look at them
Yeah.
online too, but I like the tangible ones as well.
So do you want me to send like a whole binder, like these are all set up? Do you want me to send the whole binder out? No.
No, I'd say just the public notice usually, that's gonna be for the case, attached to the 11x17s.
Public notice and the 11 by 17
Yeah,
plans. Okay.
And I'll still pick up my binder.
right. I don't think we need the, if there's waivers, things like that, I don't think those need to be in that, because that'll be spelled out on the, well, the waivers won't be, but if they're asking for a conditional use permit as part of the application, it'll list it on the case public notice. Yeah, so anything else I think can be kept online as well, like if there's a hydrogeologic study, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, like that, you don't want me to make a photocopy of the application and send it out, that stuff, just the plan, just the 11 by 17 plans.
Well, we would usually get the checklist, we would get like the whole packet kind of stuff. We would get the checklist and stuff.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't hurt, just because we're required to make sure that the application is complete. It probably might not hurt.
Checklist that gets sent in by the applicant
Mr. Heaney?
No, I don't really have anything, but I would, you had mentioned your, thinking about looking at your master plan. I know that there are some grant dollars that are available through New Hampshire, Invest New Hampshire, to do evaluations of your master plans, particularly your housing one, obviously. But it allows you to look at, sections of your master plans and potentially update them. You have to do a community engagement piece as well, but that's a good exercise anyways. It's done on a rolling admission, so typically when that's the case, it doesn't mean it's as competitive as some other grants are, so maybe it's possible to get in there. I know that we're helping with grant applications for other organizations, other communities, so if that's something you guys are interested in, maybe reach out to Jen or something.
Grant funds available for that, I think we should always, look at those if they're a possibility. I think, especially for that community engagement piece, that's probably the hardest part of a master plan, is getting people involved, so, and they are supposed to be the guiding force of of it, so.
Did you guys do a whole master plan at one time, or have you just been doing chapters?
No, so the last time it was done, which was a decade ago, was a full revision, so it was.
But it hadn't been done for years
Yeah.
before that.
It was a big, heavy lift, complete update, chapter by chapter. So,
That was 10 years ago. That was part of that.
yeah. So that was,
Half of it having fun.
so at minimum, we have easy things to do, just updating tables, census data, that kind of stuff. And we can always do something like that for this year, and then do a bigger lift next year or the year after.
I mean, a lot of, like Barrington, I'm working on their land use chapter, and another gentleman was working with, he's doing the transportation chapter. So, there's some communities that are, similar in scope and size to you guys that are doing it chapter by chapter. They're just sort of kind of keeping it on a 5-year rotation, land use, economic development, housing, that sort of thing. So that might be another way to look at it, right? Because it is a big lift.
Yeah, we're kind of behind the 8 ball, except we're at 10 years.
Yeah.
Time, so.
And sometimes, full townwide master plans can be difficult too, because some parts of your community are entirely different than other parts. If you've got like a denser area that's a commercial corridor versus, like a more rural wooded area, sometimes just doing villages or little areas is a smart way to go. Anyways, just some thoughts, but there is potentially some money out there for at least part of it, perhaps all of it.
I'll look that up. Before I adjourn, one other thing, and I'll probably say this exact same thing at the next meeting. At a prior meeting, there was some back and forth between board members. So everybody here is entitled to their opinion and should speak and add questions to cases and things like that, and in general, we're very respectful of the applicants and each other, in that we may have vastly differing opinions on something, we may feel strongly about a case, but I just ask that we continue doing so with decorum and respect of each other, and no personal attacks in between. If someone speaks something, and I've always been one that will bring things up if I see it in there. Doesn't mean I feel strong one way or the other, but if I see it in our zoning or our subdivision regs, I feel like we have to address it, and the board has their wish. Every member is welcome to make a motion if they have a question about what we're doing. I've done that in the past, had motions for sending it to town council for review. But again, respect of each other and applicants and decorum. We are the professional body for applicants here, so just want to make sure that continues. And again, thank everybody for your involvement here and willing to be here as either an alternate, an elected member. It takes a lot, and it's appreciated. Anything else from anybody? Alana, do you have anything for us? I don't miss you out. All right, motion to adjourn, anyone?
Move to adjourn?
We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. 8:09 p.m. Look at that.
Do you
It's a good
want these
meeting.
plans back?
10 o'clock.
It's gonna bring all new next time.